Oh, and here is the unicorn and I think a bear again. And this one really looks like the bear is looking in a mirror rather than reading a tablet. I'm not sure. But then there is the Four of Coins, which is, oh, here he is, Four of Cups, is a monkey looking in a mirror, and you can see his reflection there. And I've talked about that before as being kind of a satirical commentary on the nature of humanity. Well, hi there, this is Ina from Debry Tarot, and today I'm doing a response to Mascha from Musings by Mascha. She's doing this great series on the Minchiate called Mesmerized by Minchiate, and I'm absolutely loving it. Her last video in the series showcased her Minchiate collection, and I think she mentioned in it that she might like to see others' collections, so I thought I'd go ahead and show you my Minchiate decks because I have I think a nice variety. My favorite Minchiate used to be the Etruria because I really preferred the more refined engravings. So I have this one by Gello. This is an edition that's copied from a deck from 1725. I don't find this particular deck to be super usable and shuffleable. So it's not one that I use necessarily, but I absolutely love it. And I'm not going to go too much into the details of the cards today, but I highly recommend checking out Mascha's series if you want more details. But you will notice, if you're not familiar with Minchiate, that the triumphs already are a little different. So we have a conjurer here, and then we have a Grand Duke, which is probably a later name for this particular triumph, since I guess Grand Dukes didn't exist early in the history of Minchiate. This is the Western Emperor and the Eastern Emperor. Love as a concept, and temperance, fortitude, and so on. Justice is familiar. Many of these will be familiar. Instead of a hermit, we have time. Very cool death card. And then there are additional virtues that aren't included in the TDM deck, such as hope, prudence, faith, and charity. And then there are elements, and then the zodiac. And then some beautiful pip decks from there after the celestials. So this is the Gello Etruria, which I absolutely love. But I don't use it, and instead I use this MPC version, which is standard tarot size, smooth cardstock, and absolutely gorgeous images. And they've been sized to fit this deck really nicely, or this card size, I should say. A lot of the pips have these little decorative additions. I think this is supposed to be a bear, and sometimes he looks like he's reading a book. Here he looks like he's reading a tablet. Or I should say, sometimes he looks like he's looking in a mirror, and here he's reading something. And this makes me wonder, often a brown or black unicorn and a black bear are associated with Germany, so I'm not sure if this is supposed to represent Germany somehow. Sometimes in the older cards, that's more apparent. Beautiful Ace of Coins. This is the Valet of Coins. The Queen of Batons. There's Cancer and Pisces. This is Faith. Here Faith is reading a tablet. Sometimes she has a mirror, and sometimes it's a masculine figure with a mirror. Here's Aquarius, Gemini, Air. I don't understand why this is Air, but it is. There's Hope. I like this version of the Five of Swords. It's a fox in a hen house. And all the knights are centaurs of one kind or another. Here's a leonine centaur for the Knight of Coins. And here's a winged lion fish creature as the Knight of Cups. Oh wow, I had 3 knights in a row. How interesting. So another one for the Knight of Batons. And the coins are all unique with different faces, except for the 9 of Coins, which has birds. So yeah, I love this deck. It's very usable, very shuffleable. It has pretty backs. And this is available on MPC. Make playing cards. And like I said, Etruria used to be my favorite Minchiate, so I definitely wanted a usable one in my collection. It doesn't come with any kind of box, and I believe I just ordered this bag from Make Playing Cards, if I remember correctly. Here's one that is a surprising treat. It's by Spencer's Gifts, and yet it is a really great little deck. Now it is huge with kind of thick, chunky cards. It is usable, but I have others that I prefer to use. But you can see it's nice, flexible. So it's very sturdy cardstock. It's rose petal. But I just, with such a large deck, this is a 97 card deck. I do prefer a smaller size. So I love this. Unfortunately, there is no information on what deck this is a reproduction of, but it's a nice reproduction. You can see that it's Balinese because of these orange or red dots. That is just something that happens with Balinese decks, and there's no consensus as far as I know as to why that is. It might be due to adhesive that was used in that area, or it might be a design feature or preference, so not really sure. But you can even see where the border, where it was pasted over, folded over and then pasted down over the image of the card, is retained. And so, like I said, it's a really cool reproduction. Now, the labels are off. So this is the one that's equivalent to the Grand Duke, which I pointed out earlier. This doesn't quite look traditional. She's a little more corseted, but people do often refer to her as an empress and consider her to be female. Not super sure that that's true, but here she is labeled as the empress. Here the Western emperor is labeled as the pope, and the Eastern emperor is labeled as the emperor. So there are some differences, but other than that, it sticks to the traditional triumphal order. That is specific to the Minchiate. And yeah, it's just a very colorful, this is an older style of Minchiate than the Etruria, with a little less sophisticated coloration, but really charming in my opinion. So I really love this deck. It was a great find. I found it used. Spencer's doesn't print this anymore, but I would bet that there are some random ones sitting on the shelves at the stores. So you might go to the mall and see if there is a leftover Minchiate deck at your Spencer's store. There, like I mentioned, isn't much of a hint as to the history of this deck, but there are a few indications. I think this is a tax stamp, or if not a tax stamp, then a manufacturer's stamp. There is somewhere that states that this was made in Rome. Let's see if I can find that. Here we go. Made in Rome on the 4 of coins, and it does say 1803 upside down. So that's really all I have. There is another card that says Carte Fine, but it doesn't say where. So didn't really finish the thought. But yeah, it has really pretty backs. If I wanted to use it, I absolutely could. It's very flexible, but my hands aren't huge, and I have other smaller Minchiate decks that I would prefer to use. Here is information on that. And this is the Minchiate by Spencer's Gifts. I mentioned that I have smaller decks that I prefer, and of all the decks that I've got here, I have my Make Playing Cards Etruria, and these two are the ones that I actually use. I'll get to those in a sec, but let's talk about the Florentine. This is the Minchiate Florentine by Vecchi with a book by Laura Tuan. I got this largely for the book because she is just known to be a well-respected and prolific tarot writer. And also, I didn't have a Florentine. Now, I will say some people do pronounce the E at the end of Florentine. I think that's a regional variation. There's an Italian tarot tuber named Esperien Tarot I like to listen to. And he says Florentine. And I think Florentine just rolls off the tongue for me a little easier. So I think there are options as far as how that's pronounced. But the good news is, not too long ago, YouTube was not auto-translating Italian videos, and now they do. So I will link his channel as well, because it's really good. But this book is pretty good. She's got really detailed entries in here. Now, I wouldn't call her a Minchiate expert. If you look at her books, she writes about everything. Like, she has a ton of books on all sorts of different subjects. So this isn't her specialty. But I do like, for example, her definitions for the suits are really good. This isn't Italian. She is Italian, and her writing is often translated into Spanish and French. It's rarely translated into English, unfortunately. So I'm glad to have a book by her. She has the meanings for numbers listed. They're a little off from the way I see it. But anyway, it's a really great resource of a book. These cards are huge. And that is my main complaint about this deck. It's got these lovely, just very springy, rubbery cardstock. It's quite thick. And a rose petal finish. And they are shuffleable. But I really have to I have to shuffle it in thirds. So I'll show you. You can shuffle. I kind of will waterfall shuffle it a little bit, but I'm not really good at that. So yeah, it's shuffleable. I can barely overhand shuffle it though, and that's a problem for me because normally I riffle shuffle until I feel like it's well mixed. And then I overhand shuffle just to kind of get into a reading state of mind, and I can't do that with this deck and not concentrate really hard on it. But this is a Florentine. It has finer engraving like the Etruria, but with brighter colors to it. And the engraving isn't quite as fine as the Etruria. This one does have some smudging on it, and I'm assuming that's part of the original cards. Each card has a tax stamp on it, and then this border is pretty traditional. In the Minchiate, the moon card is the astronomer rather than the star, and it has a magus for the star card. I'll show you a few of these, but yeah, these colors are just gorgeous. And this is typical of a Florentine deck. Now, it's a little bit of a bummer because this cardstock is so lovely. It would be a joy to shuffle if it were smaller. Now, it does have labels. That's one reason they're so big, and I don't need labels for the Minchiate. I think it is helpful to have those, since it is a lesser known system or tradition. But I could trim these off. I've never trimmed a deck before, but if I ever do trim a deck, obviously I wouldn't want one that's important to me like this to be my first attempt. But maybe someday I'll trim this and make it actually shuffleable, because I could definitely get rid of those labels. I wanted to point this guy out though. There are several beasts or critters looking into mirrors in this deck, and I think this one is a fawn, perhaps. You can see he's got some cloven hooves and a little beard. And there's a hedgehog or porcupine down there, and then here we have time, Il Tempo. Here's the Grand Duke, Gemini, and here's the Magus on the star card, as I mentioned. I'll just show you a few of these. The Odd Air. It's Cancer, Pisces. Very cool devil with a snake belt. I really love these colorful cups. Oh, this is a cool feature here. First of all, look at the gorgeous robes of this angel. So this is labeled as the trumpet. This is often called either trumpets or the angel in older Italian systems. And sometimes either the world card or this card will be referred to as fame. And here you can see it says fama volat, which is a Latin saying. That means fame flies, or reputation precedes you, or rumors spread, those kinds of things. This book actually interprets it a little differently and says that, your reputation dissipates and doesn't matter, in the grand scheme of things. I guess in the grand scheme of your soul or whatever. So she takes a little bit of a different approach. to that saying, which I think is also interesting. But yeah, fama volat, fame flies. So this is often the fame card, but in some decks and some traditions, the world card is the one that is referred to as fame. So that's not the best name to call it because there is some confusion on that. I usually refer to that card as trumpets or the angel because I like to think of it more as an announcement or news or a revelation rather than judgment. It's beautiful. Justice card. The stag there. So, oh, and here is the unicorn and I think a bear again. And this one really looks like the bear is looking in a mirror rather than reading a tablet. I'm not sure. But then there is the Four of Coins, which is, oh, here he is. Four of Cups is a monkey looking in a mirror, and you can see his reflection there. And I've talked about that before as being kind of a satirical commentary on the nature of humanity. So this is the Minchiate Florentine by Vecchi with text by Laura Twan. This box has kind of a bit of a magnetic closure here. And it actually came to me, I had to re-glue this on. These were separate when I got it. So when I first got into Minchiate, there were no in-print books available in English about it. This one was written in the 90s, but at that time, you couldn't find it. Like, this deck really couldn't be gotten, or this book, I should say. So the only resource at that point was an article or a blog post by the Queen's Sword, and it's actually pretty good. So that is how I got started with Minchiate. And I will post a link to that because it's a free resource online. I don't know who the writer of the Queen's Sword is. It's an older website. And so if anybody knows who she is or who they are, let me know. I'm curious because she's got a really great website with great resources. Now, like I said, this book by Brian Williams. He made the Renaissance Tarot. This book is from 1999. I'm pretty sure he has passed away though, maybe in the early 2000s. And this book is excellent. It's so good. It's pretty simple and readable. It just has some really good history with some backup images, and it's one that you can easily dip into and just read through. You know, if you want to read a few pages on fortitude, and then there's a little blurb at the end of the divinatory meaning. So it doesn't bog you down with a ton of information, but it's a good resource because you can quickly look things up in it. And it has really great images to kind of back up the symbols that he's discussing. Now, I will say that these cards are not my favorite. They are designed by him. And so they're very modernized. And I think a lot of people would really appreciate this style. They're all really prettified, I think. I really enjoy more authentic looking tarot art. But it's nice art, and it's very clear art for sure. So, and the good news is this set, though it's out of print, is much easier to get now. Even when I first got it, it was still hard to find and a little more expensive than what I've been seeing it for lately. So I don't know if it's because Minchiate is getting popular and people are digging out their old stocks of this out-of-print book, realizing that now they can finally sell it. I don't know what's going on, but that's the good news. This book by Brian Williams is more gettable now than it has been in the past. Now, if you're interested in Minchiate, but you read RWS and don't really want to learn a whole new system, but you would like the extra zodiac cards and the element cards, then this Debry deck is a good option. I don't know why I even got this. I don't remember. But I will say back in 2020, one of my 3 first TDM decks was the Debry TDM, and they did a great job with that. Yulia Orlova is their in-house artist, and she does beautiful work. She has a lot of respect for historical tarots and does a great job refreshing the art on them. However, they then do tend to structure the decks in a more RWS tradition. So even the TDM has strength or fortitude, and Justice switched, and the labels on the cards are more in line with RWS. The TDM deck does not have keywords on it, but this does. So if you, like I said, are interested in Minchiate but don't want to learn a whole new system, these pip decks are labeled with keywords, both upright and reversed. It's just the pips that are labeled with keywords though, so not the quartz. You can see the coloring and the line work style are based on the Florentine. And it has this traditional border around it. But the triumphs are ordered like an RWS deck. And they've even created a new card for a High Priestess. I'm not really sure why they gave the High Priestess an imperial crown and globe, though. She looks like an empress. So I don't agree with this decision. They used the Grand Duke as the empress, which, you know, it's not my deck, so they can do what they want, but I think that's an odd decision. And then they've labeled the Western Emperor as the Emperor and the Eastern Emperor as the Hierophant. And then they have reordered everything so that the order is the familiar RWS order, including Fortitude at number 8. Other than that Empress, or that Priestess card, I should say, the art stays pretty traditional, though, so I can't complain too much. I do have a complaint, though, and we'll get to it. Here are the Celestial cards. So these come traditionally after all of the Zodiac and elements and things like that. But here they're ordered in the RWS tradition. And the additional virtues are added on at the end. So the remaining cardinal virtue is prudence. The remaining theological virtues pictured here are charity and faith, but unfortunately there's no hope. So by adding in that Empress, and to keep the deck a 97 card deck, they took away hope. And I think that's very unfortunate. And I keep calling her the Empress because she sure does look like an Empress. And I really think for a High Priestess card or a Papess, faith would have worked. So if it had been me, I don't mind this Empress image. And I think it maybe would have been fine to replace the Grand Duke with an Empress, or keep the Grand Duke as a non-binary Empress. I think that's great. And keeping hope with the other virtues and putting faith into the Priestess spot. She's got her tablet that she's reading. I think faith would make a great Papess / High Priestess. So that is the route I would have gone. Again, I recognize it's obviously not my art, but why take out hope? That's my only complaint. I think this is a really lovely deck, again, for somebody who's not really interested in learning a whole new system, who already reads RWS, and is just kind of interested in having a Minchiate deck. It just kind of, that's kind of a bummer, I think, to take away hope. But it is handy that it's labeled for folks who aren't familiar with these images. And other than the exclusion of the hope card, this is a lovely deck. And I've never visited this QR code. I guess this has a booklet that goes with it. So yeah, again, I don't remember why I ended up with this. I think I just really liked Yulia's art and wasn't aware that this would be structured like an RWS deck and have keywords and all that stuff. And I definitely didn't realize that they would get rid of the hope card. But I'm still glad to have it. I like Debry decks. Those are my only 2 Debry decks, but while they aren't my most favorite decks, I still appreciate them. And before I get to my last couple favorite decks, an honorable mention is Mr. Freeborg's Cherokei with the expansion pack that you can use to make it into a Minchiate. Now, these cards are inspired by a number of different historical decks. Some of those being clearly Minchiate inspired. So not this. Instead of an astronomer for the moon, we have Diana, the Huntress. Got a chariot that's very similar to maybe a Matelli or Minchiate. I do have fanning powder on this deck. If you're noticing that it slides pretty nicely. I love how Fortitude has both the lion and the pillar. Normally this is quite a sticky deck. So here we have the House of the Devil, more traditional in Minchiate for the tower. And we have a Magus for the star. Although we have more of a TDM world card. The knights are centaurs, like they are in the Minchiate. And we have, this is interesting because this is really traditional. Some of the Minchiates have a card much like this as a time build tempo card. But he does have an alternative that he has labeled as time. Three of Swords might look to you like an RWS, but I think it's definitely also inspired by the Solobusca, and the reason I think that is because the Three of Batons in the Solobusca, it's a beautiful Papist card, I love it. Anyway, Three of Batons is very similar to the Three of Hearts in the Solobusca. Oh, here we have the blindfolded Fortuna. In the Solobusca, the Three of Batons is three batons piercing a head, and here it's a skull. And we have three swords. This is like a Medal of Honor or something. But in the Solobusca, the three swords are piercing the sword, which is where Pixie got that idea, I would assume. So, here we have love is depicted as in the Minchiate. So a lot of Minchiate influence here. And then you can take this expansion pack, which I haven't done yet. I haven't even put fanning powder on this expansion pack yet. So you'll get to see cards are a little stickier. These are not traditional elements, but very cool depictions of all the elements. There's air and fire. And we have hope here, prudence, charity, the Grand Duke, the Western Emperor, the Eastern Emperor. And then this is interesting because this is labeled Padre Tempo or Father Time, but with a really non-traditional image, whereas this is a traditional Father Time image, but it's labeled the Hermit. So you have a choice there. And then there are all the zodiac signs. So this is my honorary Minchiate deck, and that is Mr. Freeborg's Cherokei with the expansion pack. It is out of print, unfortunately, but it's a great deck if you can get your hands on it. And finally, the decks I used most, other than this Make Playing Cards Etruria, are these cute little decks. This one's probably my favorite. I'll talk about that in a moment. But this is the Cherokei Minchiate di damarzo by Amparo Aguirre. I followed her for a while on Instagram. And this deck is so lovely. I picked it up before she got her current website. So it really wasn't set up for English speakers. And it was amusing because Minchiate was translated as bullshit, the entire website, and I enjoyed that immensely. The adventurous thing was that there was only a drop-down menu available to choose your state, and it did not translate the states very well. So I had to kind of just hope that I chose the correct state and hope that my country and zip code would be enough to get this deck to me. She has switched to a new website now that is more set up for international orders. This deck is just so gorgeous. It is based on an Allione style Minchiate, but with much brighter colors. There's hope. This Four of Swords, instead of a bear and a unicorn, it has a squirrel and a Pegasus. Now the squirrel is traditional, but I think the Pegasus is her addition. And I'll save this out so I can compare that to another Allione deck. And here, the charity card, the theological virtue charity means putting love for the divine above love for yourself. And I think it's fine to read it as our modern definition of charity, but that virtue in the Renaissance was actually referred to as magnanimity. So this is often depicted with a flaming heart representing divine love. She's sometimes depicted with a lantern as well, or a candle. Sometimes she's feeding a pelican who represents Christ. Pelicans, I don't think this is true, but in legend, they will pierce their breast to feed their babies in hard times, allowing them to feed off of their own blood rather than let their babies starve. There's some really beautiful and interesting imagery with Charity. Now, whenever you see her in a card that's less clear with a flame in her hand, it is supposed to be a flaming heart, which is depicted more clearly in the Damarzo Tarot. And even if you can't see it, it is meant to be there in Minchiate tarots in general. Yeah, the colors are gorgeous, and I don't know if you can see it has this coppery spot gilding to it. There you go. How gorgeous is that? And I think that's a scene of damarzo on the world card. And possibly another one there on trumpets. Oh, and here we have Romulus and Remus, one of my favorite Minchiate cards. So this, as I was mentioning before, I like having, with such a large 97 card deck, I like having a smaller, easily shuffleable deck. This one is also an Allione. And it is printed by Almondo. And this is probably my favorite Minchiate at the moment. I absolutely love the colors. And I find it really charming. You can see the Balinese dots on it. Oh, and here's the squirrel and unicorn that I had mentioned before. And here's Faith with a mirror. In some decks, Faith is a more masculine figure. There's Capricorn. This is the Western Emperor. There's the Eastern Emperor. There's Aries with some stamping on it. A lot of times this is a bunny. This looks more like a bobcat in this card. Look at these colors though. This is a small laminated deck. I'm not sure the best way to get it. I can tell you how I got mine, and maybe you can track one down. So I got it from an eBay store called 4 Great Collectibles, and I will link that in the description. And the seller is Hugo. He's delightful to work with. And he had this listed on his eBay store. And the funny story about it is that he's based in Argentina, and his shop is excellent. I recommend it. He has a bunch of Pablo Robledo decks, lots of anything from affordable in-print Argentinian decks to rare collectible tarots. So it's a great shop to check out. But he also has a home in Madrid, and so he will sell some decks that are shipped from Spain. And that was the case with this one. Here's Libra with a porcupine, and then some kind of creature there. Sometimes that looks like a fox, but not as much in this version. So anyway, I'm waiting for this to ship to me from Spain. It's apparently some small card maker, and Hugo sends me a message saying, here's your tracking number, and it goes to Madrid, and then it says it's delivered. And so I messaged him saying, hey, this looks like it was delivered in Madrid. Do you have the tracking number for the second leg of the trip? And he got back to me and said, oh no, I don't know why they sent it to my home in Madrid. So I will order a new one for you and make sure that they send it to your house instead. And it was just so sweet. He said, this man is very aged, and so I have patience with him. I thought, yeah, that's no problem, Hugo. I am in no rush, and this elderly fellow can send it at his convenience. So I always thought that was really sweet. Yeah, I will link to his store on eBay, and he doesn't have it listed right now. But you might message him if you're interested in this deck and see if he can order one for you. But just a little bit of info about it. It is a copy of one that's at the Fournier Museum. It says, this set of cards, printed in 2004, is a reproduction of the original found in the collection of the Fournier Cards Museum in Alava, owned by somebody. And this is in the style of a Leon deck or a Lion Minchiate, but it is by the card maker, Almondo. And it is used, Amparo Aguirre is restoring another Allione deck. Maybe the one that she received from her grandmother. She had an Italian grandma. She lives in Italy now, but she is Chilean. And the transformation videos on her Instagram are amazing. So I'm really excited for this deck. But she did say she's restoring a different Allione deck, but she is using this one as a backup. So if there's anything that's unclear on the original images of her main primary deck, then she uses this to help clarify the images. And she made a post saying something about how this deck doesn't get the appreciation it deserves because of the printing quality. And she just wants to restore it so that it gets recognized for the beauty that it has. Personally, I appreciate the rustic look of these historic decks, but I'm really excited for her restoration. And I did want to point out the damarzo is based on the Allione decks. And if you have it, you may have noticed that the Queen of Coins has this eye patch. And that is due to the fact that just printing inconsistencies or maybe woodblock engraving, you know, having a piece missing. She doesn't have an eye here, so Amparo gave her an eye patch. I highly recommend following Amparo on Instagram. I will link her page. And Mascha's last video about her Minchiate collection has a video that Amparo sent in English. So that was nice to see her speak. I've mentioned the lack of English language resources for Minchiate. We have a few here and there, but Amparo's book, Tarot Minchiate, the Noblest and Most Beautiful of the Card Games, has been translated into various languages, including English, and a copy of the ebook comes with the purchase of this deck, or you can purchase the book for, I think, $20, the ebook, on her website. The other thing is, though, that her original book came out in its second edition recently, and that makes me wonder if, with the increasing popularity of Minchiate in the English-speaking world, if maybe the print edition will come out in English. That would be awesome. She hasn't made any such announcement, but I am hoping for that because it would be great to have a print edition of the book. So yeah, that is my Minchiate collection. I hope you enjoyed. This is 9 decks if you include the Mr. Freeborg. I do have a 10th one on the way, and I'll share an image with it. It's a French book and deck set, Le Tarot Minchiate Restauré. And it's one that has been on my wish list, but the book is in French, so I wasn't sure if that was worth it for me to get. And I wasn't sure about the card quality, but I've seen it a couple times on Mascha's channel now. And in her last video, she took the cards out, and it was apparent that the cards were really nice quality. And I thought, oh yeah, I definitely would like to have that deck because the colors are just gorgeous. So I'm looking forward to that one as well. And I appreciate Mascha for showing it, so I could tell that it definitely looks like it's worth getting. I hope you enjoyed seeing my Minchiate collection. The light is getting a little strange. But it's definitely a tradition that has taught me a lot about tarot and about tarot history. And so I appreciate that resources on it, as well as gorgeous decks, are becoming more available. And definitely go check out Musings by Mascha for her series, Mesmerized by Minchiate. I think she has 3 videos on it, and I look forward to every one. And I will link the last one for you. Well, thanks again for your time today. I will talk to you next time.